R.A. Clarke is an author-illustrator living in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. When she's not writing, she's enjoying family time, acting in community theater, or relaxing at the lake. Her multi-genre fiction has won international competitions such as the Write Fighters 3-Day Novella Challenge, the Writers Workouts Writers Games, the Writers Weekly 24-Hour Contest, and Red Penguin Books Humor Contest. She was a Futurescapes Award finalist in 2021, a Dark Sire Awards finalist in 2022, and her children's book, The Big Old Bike, was a Hindi's Libraries finalist in 2021. Her debut sci-fi novel, Race to Novus, was released in 2024 by Cloaked Press.
Hello, it's Rachel Clarke here, also known as R.A. Clarke in the adult fiction writing circles. Yes, thank you, Elaine, for having me here and for letting me read this story. I'm so excited to do this. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I hope I can't wait to listen to the other stories. It's just I'm really, really happy to be here. So thank you for that. And today I am going to be reading from my book, Don't Look, Just Run, by R.A. Clarke. So this is a collection of horror stories, short stories, flash fiction, and poetry that I wrote, and it actually just came out in October of 2024. So it's a fairly new release book for me, and I'm really happy with it. I think it's great, and hopefully, if you're a horror fan, check it out. Maybe you like it too. So I'm going to read the first story from this book called The Finisher. And it's actually a story I wrote for a contest quite a while ago, years ago, and I expanded it, and it's just become, I don't know, one of my favorite stories, actually. So yeah, I will read some of it, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So here we go. From the moment I met Terry, I knew it was fate. She was looking to hire a very particular kind of somebody and stumbled across my Craigslist ad, which read, The Finisher, a step above the rest, proof on film every time. Completion, discretion, and creativity guaranteed. She had sent me a message, and though I wasn't sure if I'd accept the job, I agreed to meet her here. Not exactly the nicest part of town, but it made sense, considering. I smiled, shook her hand. I'm Winston. Nice to meet you. Hello, yes, I'm Terry. Same to you, too. She seemed nervous, her eyes darting around and hands quaking. But after a few moments, her posture relaxed a little. Probably realized the shabby pub was practically empty. Nobody to overhear our conversation. What a beautiful creature. I ordered 2 bourbons, sliding one across the table to further ease her worry. I wanted to assure her I wasn't some generic thug, but rather an educated and well-mannered man who possessed a unique set of skills for which others paid handsomely. A professional. Terry sipped her drink and proceeded to explain why she'd called. She wanted somebody to scare her cousin, Damien. They lived next door to each other, stuck in a horrible feud that was getting out of control. Terry had apparently cared for Damien's ailing mother, a woman he sorely neglected. Years later, when the mother finally died, she'd left Damien's share of the inheritance to Terry instead of her own son. He began tormenting her, poisoning her flowers, leaving hateful notes on her car, shooting paintballs at her cat. He even accused me of stealing, she said, cheeks flushed. I suspected his accusation wasn't entirely untrue. Clearly, the pretty thing had stolen his mother's heart. It wasn't a shock to me. Of course, the old lady would love Terry, but not only was she lovely, but this Damien guy sounded like a real asshat. Anyway, I got really fed up and fought back, she explained, staring at her hands. I'm not proud of it, but I spray painted Damien's precious sports car, poured bleach onto his lawn, tossed cat poop in his yard. Good for her. I didn't know what else to do. None of it worked. He didn't back off. She flung her hands out, then reeled them back in with a nervous glance at the bearded bartender. Don't worry about old Bob. He's heard a lot worse things than that in this bar, I said with a reassuring smile. I glanced back, waving a hand at her. Please, continue. Terry took a deep breath. Damien slandered my name all over our neighborhood, calling me a scheming gold digger who had manipulated his mother, said I was toxic. He turned most of my extended family against me, made me into a black sheep. Terry explained She went to the police, and I shook my head. Calling the police never solves these kinds of issues. The way her voice shook, I could tell she was torn up inside. Poor thing. I just needed someone to make him believe bad things will happen if he keeps harassing me, she said with a weak smile. I think that will make him stop. I was unsure about the job. Honestly, it seemed a bit beneath me. Sure, it would be easy money, and cultivating fear was definitely in my wheelhouse, but my true specialty was death and disappearance. Money wasn't everything, after all. This kind of gig offered little opportunity to indulge in the creative expression I enjoyed. I nearly said no, but then Terry looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. The delicate curve of her lips buckled my resolve, swaying me, seducing me. A woman like this needed a white knight, a protector. Knowing I could be that for her, I obliged. Honestly, I couldn't imagine many men denying her anything. She was a captivating woman. We shook hands and exchanged the necessary details. I required payment up front, and Terry slid an envelope across the table. She'd come prepared. I was impressed. Tucking the manila into my breast pocket, I nodded, happy to be doing business with you. I'll be in touch. And we parted ways. A week later, the job was done. I was positive Damien wouldn't bother Terry anymore. I was also certain I was smitten, my thoughts consumed by Terry's long brown hair and curvy figure. Like a hunter spying a doe in the meadow, her vulnerability drew me in. A woman of Terry's caliber deserved the very best in life, and I knew I could give that to her. She'd come into my world for a reason. I couldn't wait to see her again. Terry insisted we meet in public, so we returned to the same pub, tucking into a corner booth. I proudly showed Terry her film. See, most of the clientele enjoy seeing visceral proof of that their job has been completed. Doing so is part of my business model, a little something extra to set me apart from my competitors. I grinned at the end of the video when the camera panned over my hand-painted portrait of Damien's face. The words, "Keep your mouth shut and leave Terry alone," written around in thick red letters. I'd pinned Damien's bloody tongue to the colorful canvas for authenticity. Just another example of my artistic flair that my clients could expect. A calling card of sorts. Perhaps a touch flamboyant, garnering unwanted scrutiny from the law, but I didn't care. With my IQ and alter ego, they'd never catch up to me. I like to think of myself as the Bruce Wayne of killers. I was the finisher for a reason. Given Terry's penchant for spray painting cars, I was certain she'd appreciate my creative gesture, her very own custom piece of art. But Terry didn't look impressed. She seemed more worried for Damien than anything else, asking if he'd be all right. Of course, he's not dead, I replied. I had made sure not to kill him. It was excruciating not to, but I'd reined myself in for her. Yet she kept shaking her head, using words like permanent damage and excessive force. What? Perhaps I misspoke? Clearly, she needed enlightening. I explained that I had broken Damien's hands, clipped his tongue, and popped his eyes out of their sockets for a reason. It's perfect symbolism, you see. These body parts were the tools he used to spread evil and make your life miserable. It's fitting. What I just did definitely put the fear into him and sent a clear message, just like you asked. I smiled, but it was disheartening when she didn't seem to appreciate my unique artistry. Her brows kept pinching together, and I didn't like that. Stretching my neck side to side, I felt the satisfying crack in my joints, then took a deep breath. I wasn't used to receiving that kind of reaction, not in the circles I traveled. My work was typically admired, highly regarded. My fingers fiddled with the smooth handle buried in my pocket. What if somebody finds out I hired you? Did you leave any evidence behind? The words rushed from Terry's mouth, her eyes wild as her hands raked through her hair. Leave evidence behind? Does she think I'm some kind of amateur? Holding on to my tenuous sense of calm, I tried to put myself in her shoes. Her problems had been solved, so she was probably just overwhelmed by the freedom she'd regained. It was a perfectly executed job, I assure you. No police will knock on your door. Then Terry's face turned red, avoiding my eyes as she grabbed her jacket and purse. My teeth clenched. My fingers tightened around the grip on the Swiss Army knife tucked inside my pocket. I just did this woman a huge favor, and she thinks she can be angry? That she can leave? I'm sorry, you must be confused. I whipped my hand out and slammed the pointed tip of the blade into the table. The thick wooden slab shook. She flinched, her face growing pale. I immediately apologized for my outburst. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Anger probably wasn't the most attractive quality to present to a love interest. Okay, yes, it's perfectly fine. I'm sorry I upset you. Carrie spoke quickly, encouraging me to stay calm and relax. Ah, there. See? I didn't think she was actually angry, just a miscommunication. Her voice was back to being soft and soothing, highlighting her peaceful spirit. Thank exactly the kind of woman I needed in my life, someone to keep me grounded. On a whim, I reached across the table to hold her hand and asked her out on a date, starting now. She slapped my arm and tried to pull away. So playful. But I squeezed tight, grinning like a schoolboy in love. Terry smiled sweetly, glancing at her watch. Goodness, I'm going to be late. I have to go, Winston. Perhaps another time? She thanked me for all my help, even complimented my painting skills before explaining she had urgent business to take care of. Her gentle hand tugged, pulling from mine much sooner than I would have liked, but I let it go. Terry stood. I'll call you, she said over her shoulder as she rushed out the door. But she didn't. Terry was a tough woman to get a hold of after that. All my emails bounced back and her phone number was disconnected. That silly girl seriously needed to pay her bills on time. A police cruiser sat outside her house every day. At first, I thought it was her cousin's protection detail, but that concept really didn't make much sense. Damien was still in the hospital. I needed to see her again, so I decided to pay a special visit. As a general rule, I avoided follow-ups with clientele, but an exception could be made if it meant securing the woman of my dreams. Arriving on her block, I saw the police car was still there. Inconvenienced, I set to work. 30 minutes later, the ground reverberated as a garage 2 blocks over exploded into flame. As predicted, the cruiser took off. Nothing beats the reliability of a strategically placed incendiary device. I wouldn't have much time until the street flooded with red and blues, so I worked quickly. After picking the back door lock and sliding inside the house, I swept the main floor. Nothing. Paused, stroking my jaw and wondering where she might be. A creak upstairs caught my attention. I ascended the stairs quietly, hearing a click down the hall. Was Terry being playful again, hiding to surprise me? Tiptoeing across the floorboards, a faint noise emanated from the bedroom closet. Aha! Whipping the door open, I smiled. There she was. Huddled in the corner, her eyes were adorably wide as she peered up at me. She looked stunning. The muffled voice of a dispatcher echoed from the cell phone pressed against Terry's chest, telling her to remain calm. Of course, she dialed 911. Wouldn't anyone after a sudden explosion? I grabbed the phone from her hands and turned it off. Well, I smashed it under my boot to be exact, but that's a minor detail. Cell phones were overrated anyway. People wasted their lives playing on those things. Regardless, a vital question needed to be answered. Why were police parked outside? I pulled her out of the closet. Did you call them? Were you worried Damien would try and retaliate somehow? Yes, yes, I was. So much. She immediately agreed, her head fervently bobbing up and down. Ah, I thought so. For a moment there, it seemed like she called the police because of me. A ridiculous thought. My Terry would never do something like that. To distract her from her worries, I whisked her out of the house and we shared the rest of the day together. Our real first date. Our first real date. It was important to nurture this growing spark. And that's that. That's a taste of the finisher. I'll tell you, it gets a lot more fun from there. So yeah, I don't know. There's some good stuff in here, so it's intriguing. Check it out. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of the stories that you are going to hear. And again, a huge thank you to Elaine for having me and for letting me read for you guys today. It's a wonderful month to celebrate. Ladies of Horror, right? So yeah, Enjoy and have a great rest of your day.